Hello and welcome to Siamsa Tíre. My name is Macdara Yeates. I'm a traditional singer from Dublin and a new arrival to Siamsa Tíre through the Associate Artist Scheme. Today, really, I'm just getting my introduction to the company. I'm going to meet a couple of singers, chat to a few people and learn more about the voice here in Siamsa Tíre.
About 4 years ago I was digging the land, with me brogues on me feet, me spade in me hand. And here says I to myself, what a pity to see such a fine strapping lad footing turf round Tralee, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. So I buttered me brogues and shook hands with me spade, and away down the road like a dashing young blade, when up comes a sergeant and he asked me to list. Or a sergeant to grab, put the bob in me fist, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. Well, says he, here's a shilling, for I've got no more. When you get to headquarters, you'll get half a score. Or quit your camines now, said the sergeant, goodbye. You'd not wish to be quartered, and neither would I, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. Well, the first thing they gave me, it was a red coat, and with a fine strap of leather to go round me throat. And the next thing they gave me, I asked what was that, and they told me it was a cockade for me hat, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. And the next thing they gave me, they called it a gun, with powder and ball and a place for me thumb. Well, first she spit fire, lads, and then it spewed smoke, and it gave me old shoulder such a hell of a stroke, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. And the first place they sent me was down on the sea, all aboard of a warship bound for the Crimea. 3 sticks in the middle, all rolled round with sheet. Och, she walked on the water without any feet, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. And when at Balaclava we landed quite sound, cold, wet and hungry we lay on the ground. And next morning for action the bugle did call, and we had a hot breakfast of powder and ball, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. Fate, we fought at the Alma likewise in Kerman, and the Russians they whaled us down on the Redan. And in scaling the wall there myself lost an eye, and a big Russian bullet ran away with me thigh, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. And it's there that I lay stretched on the cold ground, while heads, legs and guts they were scattered all around. And I wish that me man, me cleavings were nigh, so they'd bury me decent and give a loud cry, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. And it's oft times I thought of me name and me home, and the days that I spent cutting turf, och, mavron. And with the bugle so loud and the bullet so hot, I lay down in the ditch, lads, for fear I'd be shot, with me touring ya, with me touring ya, with me touring ya. But they called for a doctor and he soon staunched the blood, and he gave me an elegant leg made of wood. Then they gave me a medal and 3 pence a day. So contented with Sheila, I live on half pay. With me Torrenia, with me Torrenia, with me Torrenia, Nurenia.
So, Joanne, I was going to welcome you, but I actually think it's more appropriate that you welcome me. You've been here a lot longer than I have. I've just sang the Kerry Recruit, which is, of course, a Tralee song,
Yes.
but one I learned from Luke Kelly, who's from my neighbourhood in Dublin, inner city Dublin, where I'm from. So, just a message: I come in peace, okay? I brought the good weather. I haven't brought Sam Maguire yet, but
okay. We won't talk about that.
We can work on that for a while. But why don't you tell me a bit about, say, your history of the company? What I'm learning as the longer I've been here is that most people here haven't just been around for a year or two. This has been a lifelong journey.
It has indeed. I started with the company when I was 9. Well, I started training when I was 9 in Siamsa Tíre, which is one of the training centres outside town. And the process is you spend your 3 years training, and then you audition. You audition to get in, and then you audition again to get into what we call the advanced class here in the theatre. So loved it from day one. Was excited to be part of something like this. I suppose I didn't have an awareness of Siamsa. It was actually through my grandmother that I got to know that you could audition and get into Siamsa, and was asked to join the professional company after I'd been to college a long time ago. And I've been here on and off. I left for a couple of years to go to London and came back, but I've been here a long time.
Right, and you're not just a member of the company now. You're the rep director. Tell us a bit about that. What are your roles and responsibilities there?
My responsibility is primarily to look after the summer season.
Sure.
Unfortunately, obviously, because of COVID, we haven't had much of a season, but that would be my role to sort of get everyone ready. I mean, we train these kids essentially in music, song, dance, and mime and drama, but really we want them to become, performers and to join and to build the company through that. So that's kind of my role, teaching and getting them ready for performance and for shows.
Of course. So really, as well as performance, your role is as an educator, as much as a manager and all the rest. Looking after
Yes.
that. I'm curious how you've found the challenge of teaching traditional singing to young people, because it's something, I don't know, I go to different cultist branches around Dublin or whatever, and there's very few singing classes. Do you know what I mean? This is really thought of as something that more comes to you, something you have or don't have. But of course, it's a craft. Of course, it's something you can learn. What's that been like approaching that as a teacher?
Yeah, it's gas that you asked me that question, because I remember the first night I taught a class back in Dingle, and because I had grown up in the company, I had obviously had learnt so much, and then I had to go in and pass it on. And I do remember going in and going, how do I do this? So it's kind of finding your own way, because I suppose I would know that it's all mostly 4-part harmonies that we sing, so I have an awareness of that. And as you say, a lot of them, fortunately, a lot of the kids have a great sense of themselves as singers. Even as a young child, a lot of them would already be established traditional singers in their own right. And it's getting them to sing together in that way. And there's the Irish language, which isn't always easy for everyone. It's definitely, and still is, a challenge. I think that, without sort of quashing too much of who they are as singers, it's getting them to have that awareness that we mostly sing in 4-part harmony, and try and get that kind of aware, especially the ear. You're training that ear to listen where the harmony sits, and getting used to that. And I think the minute you go on stage, and because I remember myself, you go on stage and you're like, okay, this is how it works. I have to listen as well as sing, which is so important.
Yeah, it's about finding your individuality in a collective or whatever, and the balance between those two things is beautiful. And you mentioned the Irish language there and the important role that plays in the company. You're going to sing Trína Cuoine na Dríomhaire for us this evening or this afternoon. Tell us a bit about that and the reasons behind choosing it and the
it's a song I've always loved. It's a beast of a song, if I can call it that. I would have had a huge awareness of it through Earlo Leonard's singing, and it's one of those songs, that I'm like, do I dare to sort of try and learn off a recording of his? And I left it alone for a long time, and then I became a mother for the first time 10 years ago. And I was like, okay, I went back to it, and I made it part of a show that I'm making with my colleague Edaein O'Connel called Keep the Faith, Keep the Folk. And it's about us as mothers, as performers, as dancers, and what that means, getting older, the body's getting older. And that song just really, really spoke to me. And sometimes, it just gets you, that song. And I felt there's so many parts to it and so much description in it, and the melody is so challenging. It's just one of my all-time favourites. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. And we were saying before, for the people watching that maybe don't have Irish, it's an interesting take on the story of the crucifixion. As young people, we learn about that story, and I get the sense anyway, the image I get is one where at a bit of a remove, maybe we're standing 10 feet back and watching the scene unfold. This changes the story entirely and gives you the story from the perspective of the mother watching her son up on the cross.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a lament, so you're putting yourself into her position, and I think, it's about, there's so much in the last sort of more than 10 years as well, I suppose, that I've become aware of in the media, and the amount of wars that are going on, the refugee crisis, all of these things, and you're imagining yourself as a mother or as a parent in those situations, and you're thinking, God, how would I cope? And I suppose it's like that in that song, that situation. It's like, how would you cope if you saw this happening to your child? And it's a powerful, powerful song.
Absolutely, and I've heard it said as well, some songs are a bit like whiskey. You need to sit in the cask for 40 years, seep into the sides and get that maturity before you feel you're ready for the bottle to come off and the cork to come off.
Absolutely, and I think, I could sing it differently in 10 years, it'll be different again. It's that kind of song. Ah, Father, ah, spill an wache tú magragial achon agus achono chan ich meer baule a chiesse ag an ngarde achon agus achono Ke an farbrashin crown pashe achon agus achono Anian tu da vach avarin achon agus achono Anishin an makin a hilach in ocht vaire achon agus achono Anishin an makin a rugach in san stabla achon agus achono Anishin an makin a dum per metri rahe achon agus achono a vikin vornach ta de veils de schron in garhe achon agus achono achon agus achono
Well, Michal, you're a blow-in like myself. Ar Connemara Stitche, go Kerry, you're a Connemara man uprooted and sent to Kerry. Tell me how you ended up here of all places.
My wife. Simple as that.
Yeah.
We were living in I was born in Limerick, moved to Connemara, grew up in Connemara in Edaein, and then moved back to Limerick and was there then for 15 years. After I was in college, I was teaching in Limerick. And then about 5-6 years ago, we made the move. Once kids started arriving, we decided we couldn't do this alone.
Yeah.
So we needed help. So we came to Tralee, where Paula's family are from. So yeah.
And how long after that transition do you end up in somewhere like Siamsa Tíre? What's the transition there like?
Well, I actually was in Siamsa before we moved down.
Okay.
We came down. There was just one summer we had decided we were going to go back to. We had one child at the time, and we were going to go back to Castle Gregory for a summer. And there was my wife spotted something on Facebook about looking for singers. You know, so I said, you know, I really didn't know that much about Siamsa, even though Paula's family would have been involved in Siamsa down through the years. Her uncles would have been here for a long time. Timmy and Michael and her own dad as well, John, would have been involved. But when I used to come down to Tralee, I'd go and play a session with them, but it wasn't to come to Siamsa or anything. So I wasn't really too familiar with it. So I said, okay, give it a go. So I came down and I did a few weeks of the Edaein show, and been here since. That was about 7 or 8 years ago. So it was then after that we decided to move down, you know. But
Fabulous. So you've married in, you've inherited the riches of the Siamsa legacy.
That's it. Yeah.
Was that in the dowry now when you put it together?
Mis his kan tapper sig bis van je moe. Kus jark bis an anjes bu jesjes bu holjet snu. Vi kroe relasse se lekne maar vlan en oels. Noire himishi valen je likshi mo launtjelum. Mis da möge sam hene gerot u reile hart. O das klonjen daar is dik in je heen is dag. Gooi on je lapekos lijn in je nog laat. Is joring pok willis team ook te veel in das. Is a hal je wagen ke fosse hoe heen maar raar. Stel luid ik niet dood is toe gimmoch do haak goedjag. Skursies en de korsen ze teut nach da nog laat. O, maak toch eens Macdara geen rammel de hoendjen hab. Is a hal je in zorg niet fossen me hoe maar raar. Ach, posen man talen wie jenders gehoord me haag. Het zeiden jou meiden is gaas en schillig aard. Is a zeker stedische vatil zo roige kerk. En zo'n uitje min vaske bin velget aan aan is ver. Kus kjol bin de maag in band valletje warne grev. Bin een brood aan de prep og se brak alle snav går hjem. Mis må store vel mellag farelle fangen le.
So you're an actor?
Yeah. So I would have done quite a bit of stuff when I was in Galway with TG Carr and that kind of stuff, and then so I'm teaching as well. So even, like I took a career break from teaching and went at it full time, and then went back. So I've been job sharing since I went back teaching. So I'm kind of managing both, you know, which is great.
And it's always something I'm very interested in, because I think a lot about the Irish song tradition, which in many ways can be a very non-performative, a very internal kind of thing. It's eyes closed or looking at the ground, whatever it is. And then you have this other side of it, which is very performative, which is very outward, you know what I mean? And it can sort of fall between those two things.
Yeah.
I'm curious, say, the relationship between performance, acting, and singing. I know, like, back in the 70s or 60s even, Ewan McCall would talk about, because he had a sort of history in theatre and a theatre background, he'd talk about, like, applying the Stanislavski method to traditional singing.
Yeah.
Kind of. Do you see parallels between the two? Do you think about them the same way?
Well, for me, it would always kind of depend on the song. Yeah. So like if it's an upbeat kind of you wouldn't really have that. I wouldn't have that connection personally to the song. You know what I mean? But if it was some like the song or on Winche that I'm going to sing in there, like for me, that song, when I heard that song first, like when I started singing Shannos, I went to a teacher called Máire Feater ní Rainan. You might have heard of her, and so she was the guru in Cusharigi, you know, where I grew up, and a very close friend of mine, Edaein O'Connel, who was obviously a very well-known Shannos singer. When he started going to Shannos, he was telling me that they used to go and they used to toast marshmallows. They're like, right, I'm in. Yeah. So I was going for the marshmallows more so than the Shannos, you know. And even then after that, I wasn't really, I'm a fiddle player, so I was more kind of going towards that as opposed to the Shannos. Sure. But I was still going to the Feshni with Edaein, but not singing.
Sure.
I just didn't, I suppose the downfall of having someone that good as a friend, you're going to go, well, look, I'm not going to beat him, so I'll stay out this year. Sure. So I used to go along, but that song Oran Wincha was one of the first ones that I heard outside of a classroom.
Sure.
And it really just struck a chord with me. It was a song that, and I suppose even when I went to Limerick then, and like the whole thing with Oran Winch is about the singer, you know, go when the singer dies, that bring him to Muinish, not Lettercalla. That's not where her gang are. It's Muinish, so don't make that mistake. And that kind of thing of going back to Connemara and that kind of thing. So with a song like that, there would definitely you would definitely feel the emotion of that while singing it. Sure. Like, say, for example, in the Siamsa shows, like in the Fado, when there's Bruch the Carrick Boyne, for example, that song, which is such a beautiful song, you know, and when you're singing the words of that, it's easy to express emotion that way, you know, through it. But it's, I suppose, with Sean-nós, it's not like that you're going to be waving your arms around the place and dropping to the knees and that kind of stuff, you know, I suppose. But it's.
But what I take mostly from that is that if we need to get more young people involved in singing, marshmallows is the key.
It is. It's got what can be hooked.
Good enough for you. Great. Well, tell us about the songs you're going to sing today. You're going to sing Oran Wincha. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I suppose, like as I said, like when I used to go around and again, like listening to Kieran singing, and it wasn't a song that he used to sing that often, but he would have sang it early on. But like listening to Shortway and these kind of singers, you know, that are just and the control that they have and the ornamentation, you know, and when to put it in and not to overdo it, sure. And this kind of thing, and it's effortless, you know, with the good Sean-nós singers. Yeah. You just watch them and go, well, like they're you know the ones that are cut above, you know, and even when I was because I was playing the fiddle and I used to go around to I was playing in pubs and I went to America one time playing with Celia Niorta, another Carney Reader winner, and again with Celia as well, and Celia would sing Oran Wincha, and when we were over in Chicago, and she used to sing that, and you just go like, it's effortless, you know what I mean, and she just had it, you know, and you're these really, really good Sean-nós singers. So that song, it was just a song that I really loved, you know. And then when I kind of, later on, because it was kind of between two songs today, I was going to go with Oran Wincha, or there's another lovely one, Corachine the Traboine, which again is another one that's just, it's a heartbreaking song, you know. But and it would have been, so I didn't do any Sean-nós for a long time. I did when I was younger, with Kieran, follow Kieran around the place. He was winning left, right and centre, and I was his fan club going around with him, you know, and we used to have great crack. Yeah. And then years later, I'd say I might have been in college or even later, and he said, the Edaein is on Westport, will you come up and sing a song? It's like, I don't know any songs. I haven't sang Sean-nós in years, you know. Yeah. I'd gone off playing in pubs. And so we did, so he taught me Corachine the Traboine, and that was just a really kind of a special song as well, you know. It's another beautiful song, but yeah, so but I went with Oran Wincha today.
Schomen Chileg he warige no ich leefte wado hier Skalne njach bo mo rivoran Ach ranjoch las is fruch Und schnacht o heden was aran So we are Smeve korale mo tamin bon Snjör vad lomli So it is kert hayanas me Ta giv de scheitjacht vor So with a Yiddish cared I knows me Leschen tag scho is gacho willon Nach Augustor ait me tu Leli no huere vra Lelin dan chwach weg schnim kjol Snart lor glas fas Ma viam ochlan som aleam An ich wi me bas O toro yish go griul me Tri la Bei pepi da so kalkean Is the kagan is it long Speitjor van ook o he leefde aan Lemme chine oskan klaar Is gari mach moch ontragam as fjers go jal na glár Smata shan o hain I muinish Bech si den to na live Bech mo hatas marebin in techte Siad goria se mo chan Sjór a pádi mór gominish me Nú is garf a veis an lá Sköll sjör harin sé ganjegam Björn vratoch in så gran Snart your gulletir kalum me Marnian o tamoiram Ach to gishar gominish me Snart te green for me go hard Spain the seilscher no tu choni Sní vei waig ni saramon
Well, Edaein, I was commenting there, everybody here almost is a new face to me, except you.
Yes.
You lived in Dublin for a brief while, and I would see you around the traditional singing circles around there. But in the recent months, you've actually made your way back to the kingdom as a result of the pandemic and everything else. How's that been?
It's been good. It's been good, yeah. It was a bit of an adjustment now moving back with my parents and stuff, but I say they're sick of me, but it was good. When you come home, like, you're able to save money, that pressure was taken off it, and all my friends moved home as well, so it was really strange. Like, for the first time in our lives, I remember we sat down last summer and we were like, oh my God, we're all in one place at the one time, and it happened to be home, you know, which was nice. That was a nice part of it, you know.
Yeah. But it's fitting in many ways. I mean, this is where you began your singing. Well, I mean, not just Siamsa, but Kerry in general. And you've of course been a member of the community for a long time. Tell me a bit about your sort of upbringing and with singing, and then how that integrated into Siamsa as you got a bit older.
Yeah. So my dad, I suppose, my grandfather actually played the fiddle, and my dad loves Irish music, so it was always a big part of my life growing up. It was always on in the house and stuff like that. And then I suppose I kind of discovered my voice when I was about, I guess, 5 or 6. And then luckily, I went to Drumclough National School, and I happened to have a teacher who was a wonderful traditional singer who a lot of people know, Karen Trench. She's well known on the Kyoto circuit, and because the school would do score and apostille competitions and stuff like that, and she kind of pushed me towards the trad side. And I suppose I just kind of fell into that then, and she got me going. And then I started entering FLAS and, get involved in that circuit and stuff like that. And then I suppose you always heard about Siamsa growing up and Siamsa Tíre, and my mom, I remember I auditioned to get into Siamsa Tíre. You do your auditions first before you got into Chalk Siamsa. And I didn't get in the first one. I think I was about 5. I might have sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which I don't think was on the Siamsa repertoire. But then I think about 3 years later, then I came back. I'd been singing traditional for a good few years by that point. And I say I think I might have been about 9 or 10. And I started off in Chalk Siamsa, did my 3 years there, and then I ended in the Monday night classes. So I suppose I was always around singing. I was always around, and on my mom's side, we all sing, and it's a big part of any of our get-togethers and stuff like that. So really easy to kind of fall into it,
Yeah, and it's come full circle now because you've landed yourself a job in house river. Tell us a bit about that.
So I am marketing assistant with Siamsa Tíre at the minute, and it is really strange. These things. I remember always people used to always say to me, like, it really sent you Siamsa Tíre, and it did, because it got me a job when I needed it.
Fabulous. And speaking of jobs, I mean, the reason you were in Dublin or anywhere indeed was you're a writer, you're a journalist of various kinds. I'm always sort of fascinated by this, like how much do singers value words? How much do they think about them, the words on the page, not just the melodies, not just these placeholders for tunes, And yourself as a writer, have you got a sort of a different perspective, a renewed perspective on words as a result of that job?
Yeah, I've actually talked about this before. It's really weird. I feel like the trad singing and learning all those songs has influenced the way I write. And when I started traditional Irish singing, and Karen Trench gave me my first song, which was Loch Shiel Inside, I remember like she stood me in a classroom and she was like, don't forget you are telling a story. And that's the way I always think. Outside of the tunes of, as you said, the tunes of songs and all that crack, the most important thing you do when you are singing a traditional song is to tell a story, because that story has been passed on from generation to generation, and it's on you within that 3 minutes that you're singing that you interpret it as best as you can and you carry that on. So I suppose as a writer then I can really see that connection, and when I'm learning a new song in particular, I love to have a good story to it, because it's the only way I feel I get into kind of emotionally is by clicking with the story, which I suppose same as being a writer, all that comes together. And I feel like the way Irish songs and the way they're written and stuff like that, I tend to write like that sometimes, which is weird. That kind of long ago aspect I like to kind of add in, So it's weird, right, that the way the two have kind of meshed together.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, to parallel that, the two songs you're singing today, first The Land of the Gale,
Yes.
right, which is a beautifully written song, but maybe some parallels with your own situation, the idea of missing home and finding a way back there. Tell us a bit about that song.
Yeah, so Land of the Gale was written by Gary McMahon, who's originally from Listowel, and he is the son of the great Brian McMahon, the writer, and he lived in Newcastle West. I would have got to know that song from a singing club in Abbeyfeale, in the Rambling Inn, which is Philip Enright's pub. He's a great singer. And I suppose when you think about Land of the Gale as a song, like there's such a story to it and there's so much going on in it, but like that song could be written in 2021 if you just changed a few of the words. Like I think it's that immigrant song that I'm fascinated by, that by people leaving and how they leave home and stuff like that. And I think like you can apply that song to anybody who's left home and that yearning for home, especially in the year that has been, and it being the pandemic and people not being able to get home. I think it's more relevant than ever, and it's a gorgeous song, and the melody, but the story to it is so lovely, and every verse has something different going on, and that, as we said, we were talking earlier about that line, I go back every night in my dreams. I just think that would appeal to anyone who is away from home at the minute and can't get back.
Sure, I wish I was westward of Dingle, on the golden sands of Belbon, where I'd wait for the mountain of Brandon to appear in the red light of dawn. I will gaze over Smerwick Harbour and the ash with its billowing sail, My body's here in the Bowery, but my heart's in the land of the Gael. Now the curse of the drink is upon me. It softens my will and my brain. And whenever I save a few dollars, I fall off the wagon again. But I'm thinking of lovely Cruvarine, the Blaskets and fair Councheville, when the sun is a red ball of fire, as it sets on the land of the Gael. Now the wind, like a knife, it goes through me, and with hunger I'm ready to fall, and the snowflakes are swirling around me as I head for the church mission hall. But I hear the sweet songs of the skylark, and I list to the curlews at will, as over the ocean they call me to come back to the land of the Gael. For it's 50 long years since I left it, a young fellow still in my teens. Did I ever return, now you ask me? I go back every night in my dreams. For the call of my homeland's all powerful, and I'm certain this time I'll not fail. Then I'll hear my own tongue. Once again I'll be young, when I'm home in the land of the Gael.
The other song, You Come With Me Over the Mountain, a song that I think exists in various forms up and down the country. There's different melodies, different versions of it. Where does your particular version of the song come from?
So it was one of my first, one of the first fast songs I ever learned, and I won an All-Ireland with it, so I suppose a bit of a real, it's in my heart, like I love it, I have good memories from it. But I was actually, because I wanted to see did I have the right words today actually when I was singing it, and the amount of different versions, completely different to the way I sang it, and I actually got it from a Kyoto CD. I must have been about 8, I think, when I learned it, and there were these gorgeous recordings of traditional singers from over the years, and I found that particular version, and I just think the melody to it is fab. In comparison to some of the other versions that are out there, not as kind of musical or something, but it just shows what trad singing can do. Because even that with Land of the Gael, there's different versions, there's different lyrics, and it's weird how when it goes through different people, the way they seem to put their own little twist in it, which I think is nice in a way, you know, because you can see they're coming from different places and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a gorgeous song as well.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
'Twas night when the moon was just seen in the west, and I first took that notion to marry. I put on my hat and I ran with such haste that you'd know I was bent in a hurry. I came to her door and I rattled the pin. I lifted the latch and I boldly walked in. On seeing my sweetheart, I bid her good in, saying you'll come with me over the mountain. What nonsense is this you've got into your head? Or what notion is this you have taken? 'Tis 12 by the clock and they're all gone to bed, so speak lower, my father will waken. I've courted a year and I think that will do. I have made up my mind to have no one but you. And if you refuse me, sweet maiden, adieu, I must go alone over the mountain. But if from my father and mother I go, they never will think of me longer. And the neighbours around them will not be so slow as to say that no one could do wronger. Sweet girl, you're wasting the sweet hours away. I care not a fig what the whole world might say. For you will be mine by the dawn of the day, if you'll come with me over the mountain. She looked in my face with a tear in her eye, and saw that my mind was still steady. Then rubbed out the tears she was going to cry. In God's name, my dear, now get ready. Just wait for a moment till I get my shoes. My heart jumped for joy when I heard the glad news. She lifted the latch, saying, I hope you'll excuse my simplicity over the mountain. By this time the moon had gone down in the west, and the morning star clearly was shining. As we two pursued our journey in haste, to be joined at the altar in Hymen. In peace and contentment we spent that long day. The anger of parents, it soon wore away. And I'll never forget it to my very last day. That trip we took over the mountain.
Oh, time sin is my hand in is the chaile sul fi go, and yag na man san ihe sem cholle in san lo. Fing ik so grelos a paterach, te gimmer tis se gol, sni void is band am henig grief, mach rakes ma vile vroon. Nil, banne gom snil klaune gom snil farse gom dam heen, nil nier bis het hele gom na grijmig ring in veel is. Ze worden nog mee wie ammedag, naar voos naar wie mee hoog. Vengen hishim hieke socher, kash me hinne fingan vroon. Nore hagig tassen daurig, snel lente va de bra. O wat een gutran hone chasnach ladi wing ik snaf. Hing schiske socher, mener chasne tra. Hege herstig lesne fwishoges, neer va de lamme la. Nil, banne gom snil klaune gom snil farse gom dam heen. Nil nier bis het hele gom na grijmig ringen veel is. Ze worden nog mee wie ammedag, naar voos naar wie mee hoog. Vengen hishim hieke socher, kash my hinne fingan vroon. Wien sorge dige rinke, wien sorge dige nol, wien sorg graver tanne voks nerd vischte lommera. Kom wien sorg lesh na kalini, kom minnik in san lo, san dier kalina gani hele, na di toch lommingra. Nil, banne gom snil klaune gom snil farse gom dam heen. Nil nier bis het hele gom na grijmig ringen veel. Is ze worden nog mee wie ammedag, naar voos naar wie mee hoog. Vengen hishim hieke socher, kash me hinne fingan vroon. Sa bhuachalína carige, mo chorle berm dív, ca higwaf na trovési, stynig faris biog dív hain, po sigoig na calini, and ishidus for sale, snobigi for dalov, mar missioner an lay. Níl banna gom sil clowna gom sil farasa gom dom hain, níl níar bis a tela gom na graim a chring in veil, is a vurnach me vi ammedoch, nar fos nor vi me hoog, fengen ishim hi ga socher, kosh me hinne fein gan room.
Francis agus Horty, Stashiv.
Gamasta hain.
So something I'm sort of learning as I've come here is that Siamsa Tíre is a bit of a family. It's a family affair. People seem to come in
Definitely.
from young to old. I was chatting to Tom earlier. He said he remembers you when you were this high,
Yeah.
when you were in college and teachers and all the rest. But I believe for you guys, singing music, it's a family affair. It's in the home. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, well, I suppose from a very young age, we were always listening to Mom singing around and around the house, and Dad singing around the house and playing a bit of piano actually as well.
Yeah.
How I started anyway was by listening to, because we got an older brother and sister as well, and they were obviously singing before us. So we were listening to them, and that's kind of how we started the singing.
Like you had, our older brother and sister and Mom and Dad, whereas I had everyone in the family then. Like so, from the second I was inside in that house, I was just surrounded by music, and I think it's wonderful. Like, 'cause
yeah, it's lovely, and then when we all get together, then as well, it's just nice to bang out a few tunes or a few songs. Or
it's always a case that if the power goes out, we have a massive session that's inside in the house.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, I was only listening to you practicing earlier on, and you were getting ready to sing a song. You were picking verses. In my house, we fought over favourite toys. You guys seem to make battlegrounds out of verses from Shannon songs. Was that the way of it?
Yeah. Well, we kind of talk about what you want to sing this time, and maybe next time it might be different. But
I'm an old man now, my head is grey, my bones are brittle too. Come sit yourself beside me now, and a tale I'll tell to you of the fine young man that once I was, in those days of long ago, when I picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel. Oh, I was live and hardy then, with hair as black as sloe. We wore no shoes in summertime, and laughed in winter's snow. I stood tall and straight as I now relate, but those years they have taken their toll. Since I picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel. In the sports field we kicked football, as the goalpost I did guard. I played handball in the alley and went home by Curtonard. In the parson's wood I oft-times stood, where my first kiss I stole, as we picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel.
I fished for sea trout in my lovely silver river field. And from Foley's orchard I confess, sweet apples I did steal. I felt pinch of thorn on an autumn morn, from the Smirle to Mount Cole, as I picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel. From Ballygrennan, twin church spires I see rising from the square, while the castle stands defiantly beside the river Fill. The island race course to the west I now once more behold, and I picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel. Oh, there you have it, that's my tale from Australia's sunny clime. At the fire of memory I'll warm my hands, if God gives me the time. Across swirling tide and ocean wide will fly my heavenly soul, to where I picked those wild blackberries in the hills around Listowel.
And so when then in that sort of development does Siamsa come into your lives? When do you join up here and join this family?
Well, I suppose for me, I would have grown up with my older sister and my two older brothers, Liam Anthony and Prungius, going to Siamsa.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a natural cause for me to, I'd love to be part of Siamsa.
We started off with Talk Siamsa in the Carriga back west, and we all went there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of travelled on to here. I started when I was, I think I was around 5 or something. Then we came in and started doing the shows, and we've been here since.
Yeah.
O tá trí smuinte mchrí nach dó liv, níl ein geall skilling da dillim nach an ólim, ní honin nis mar cá chéir an garta bhaní gléimse. Snífeg fjorling sa spyrán og gomnur aga me en selsa, is gjomer is an chrúskín is biach sélan. Gram och rym och råskін, slant I hjelm og vornin, is kamalom on chulin dov no ban. Agus gjomer ist an chruskін is biach sélan. Da vaing se bas am airoch, dagen skjelle hoogte, me churidig om tarten agus saste fein vorme. Maar am jochne pintis na kartis na knagri am ule. Skar binnelom an hjolson na gjol bin och hoche, is gjomer ist an chruskін is biach sélan. Da vaing se bas am airoch, dagen skjelle hoogte, snís agus do bache ve ma horuf, an ó hin lenne hortas na man ága, agus ligintas na shamban an ngulidís an ó hin is gjomer is an chrúskín is biach sélan. Gram och rym och råskín, slant I hjelm og vornin, is kamalom an chulin dov no ban. agus geomerí an chrúscín is beach sélan. Ná reit sa bás a verden Turkis ná raga mé an sail sa go veice mé na sasanig ag stelachas na deircha. Ranní an ngólih siad a tuile bheith déadach. Agus broca boca bristear mar a bhíochar clan na gweilbocht is geomerí an chrúscín is beach sélan. Noire raumse sier go hir rérin, chos lasadon go huignach gan éine bioam chweran. Skor a bé a dern na dine gus muinter me chéle. Gar a balkan farig ní mé no lana bheith in éile vis geomerí an chrúscín is beach sélan. Gramach rímach roiscín, sláinte gealma bhórnín, is cumilum an chúlín dómh nó bán. Agus geomerí an chrúscín is beach sélan. Is é derma vansa nó bullití is stráinte, teanna marta vala nó ólis fósta hóhin. Mar a raibhann díal bhide bherim hús a bharn da tórsa. Mar beg bannig in neile gomscach balla beag dan jódan, is geomerí an chrúscín is beach sélan. Gramach rímach roiscín, sláinte gealma bhórnín, is cumilum an chúlín dómh nó bán. Agus geomerí an chrúscín is beach sélan.
Agus is kind of dogus your native Irish speakers from area. Something I've spoken to a lot of Kerry people about in my time, how we sort of think of the regions of Irish language singing, and often there's certain places that just got left out of the conversation, maybe a bit in Ring, a bit in Rathcarn, and I think Kerry is fair to say, one of those places that's just a bit overlooked. Is it important to you guys to represent Kerry in the Irish language singing tradition, remind people that it's still here?
Oh, it is, definitely. Like you'd often hear people say that there are more songs from Mooscree or Connemara or places like that. But, we'd kind of like to bring a few of our Gaeltacht song backs, from Cork-Arena, so.
Yeah, it's nice to get, and because there are a lot of singers back our way, Shannon singers and everything. So it's nice to be able to be listening to them and they're on the radio or on CD or whatever. And yeah, we're definitely still there anyway.
I'm not going anywhere.
No, nowhere.
Oh, talk round oily loib in my garden to see me the sheets no good and beat and fall or the hoggle look and go again. Teach him in rollish. Snoira, vokik me bucket to the bucket me like it's a grieving, leaving all in no. Oh, barrel of sing out and the loud on dark and the void of the wood, but good look because the Lord is not a scare and skilling of the story big on corner. Snoira, vokik me bucket to the bucket me like it's a grieving, leaving all in no.
Well, I suppose that brings us towards the end to what is, I think, one of the more unique parts of Siamsa Tíre and its relationship to the song tradition, and that's harmony singing, choral singing in all its forms. But I think of that as quite a new thing in the tradition. But Jonathan, I believe harmony singing has quite a history with Siamsa Tíre. Could you tell us a bit about that?
It has, yeah. I suppose it started really before the company. When you think about it, our founding director was brought to Tralee to set up a choir in the local church, and he set up a boys' choir. And out of that, then there was different plays and productions were put on, and singing was always part of it. And then out of that I suppose group of like-minded people, for want of a word, they got together and they started devising little pieces to put on stage in the traditional arts. And the choral singing was always very much part of that then, because the company was founded really on the idea of the work songs, the Oran Saher, of the time. That someone would have been possibly dying out, and that was the whole idea behind it. So the very first song that was done was Oran O'Connel, and there was four-part harmony put to that traditional song, and like pretty much the rest is kind of history then, because out of that came the first production for Fado with all of those songs, Courtney Greer, Crown Owl, Roshan Dove, all of those as part of it. And pretty much every production we've done ever since, the four-part harmony has been central to it.
Amazing, yeah. And I think interesting you talk about the Áran Saothar there, and the idea that very often things that can seem contemporary actually have a much more historical base, not just in Siamsa Tíre, but in the country in general. And Martina, I believe you've actually looked a bit into this, a bit into the history of choral singing in the Irish tradition. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I have indeed, because with choral music generally, it's accepted that its real form came from church music in the 16th and 17th century. But in fact, it appears that the Irish were far more adept at the likes of harmony far more long ago than that. And it comes from more study of the Ogham writing and Ogham system. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Fion's ladder concept. And it's accepted that it was notation for music and for positioning for the harp playing. And out of the Fion's ladder comes the idea of harmony. Now, harmony would have been an alien concept in Europe generally, but it is known that the Irish took the Gregorian chant and added their own slant to it, and that included harmony. And it's just a book that I was reading recently, a very famous book about the history of Irish music by William Grattan Flood, and it was written in 1905. And if I can just quote from that just a little, please. It says, the ancient Irish were acquainted with the Ogham music tablature in pre-Christian ages. So it far predates that. They had their battle marches, dance tunes, folk songs, chants, and hymns in the 5th century. Now, the concept of hymns is thought again to be relatively new. So with the background of Siamsa Tíre and the National Folk Theatre, as Jonathan said, it came out of a choir. And in Ireland, we associate choirs with church music. So here we are, we've come the full circle, and now we know that our folk tunes were probably, again, set to harmony. And just another little piece that he says, they were the first to employ, this is back in the days of Ogham, they were the first to employ harmony and counterpoint, which is the centre of choral singing. They had quite an army of bards and poets. They employed blank verse, elegaic rhymes, consonance, which is your sweet harmony, dissonance, unpleasant harmony, inversion, burthen, which is refrain, disyllabic, trisyllabic, and quadrisyllabic rhymes. So there's a very, very, very ancient history of choral group singing and harmonisation.
Of course, in Ireland and in Siamsa Tíre.
Absolutely.
And we were speaking about earlier, and I think what's interesting about you and your position in the company is that you're the newly appointed
I'm the newbie.
choral director of the Siamsa Tíre, and you came into the post in COVID, in a time when choral singing is banned, prohibited, not allowed. What's that been like? What's taking that position in this time?
It's been very interesting because for choirs, and involved with a number of choirs, it's been very difficult because choral singing and group singing generally is a very fun activity, and it's more like a family than just a group that do things together. It's very family based, and people are very, very deep friendships. It was absolutely my delight to be asked by Jonathan to be part of the company to work with the choir. So we decided to work on Zoom, which everybody is now totally familiar with. It's not for everybody. I will say that it's not for everybody. It's very difficult for some people because of the nature of it. But we've worked away since about the end of March, and we've had our weekly rehearsals on Zoom, and it's been incredible. It's really, we've worked together. I supplied the choir with their backing tracks and their line rehearsals and all of that, so they have something to work with during the week. So then we come to our rehearsal night, and everybody knows exactly what they're doing, but there's nothing like the real thing.
Of course, of course. Speaking of the real thing, Jonathan, I mean, we're 3-4 days out from an announcement that says we can start to be somewhat hopeful about meeting together, about gathering, and I guess start enjoying the communal effect of music and of singing. I'm curious how you're feeling about the future at this point as the artistic director of a company and also a member of a choir, about the potential to come back together and sing in groups again.
Well, look, it's hugely important anyway, I think, anyway, because if you really look back at what people have gone through in the last 12 months, and people have really pulled together to get us to where we are at this stage. Like, we obviously have to be very careful going forward still, but it's going to be so important for everyone's well-being, I think, to be able to come back together and perform, sing, dance, whatever that is, because that's one of the main things that has been missing. And I mean, Martine's been very modest there when she talks about kind of bringing the choir together. They have done phenomenal work on Zoom, and we were together a couple of weeks ago where it's a recording. And to see the joy in the faces and the enthusiasm and that people had that night. I was convinced it was going to fall apart for the first hour because they hadn't been together. But I was actually shocked and amazed, like, really amazed, like how well it got. I think people were so up for it and they were so ready to do this at this stage. So going forward, that's going to be part of it as well. Now, look, things not going to be the same. And you know what? Frankly, I hope they're not the same as they were beforehand. I think we've learned a lot in the last 12 months. We now know how to use technology for choral singing, for all sorts of things like that. So it's about using both of them and the live stuff as well together to really drive us forward into the future.
Hopeful words, I think we'll all agree to leave on. Jonathan and Martina, thank you so much, and I look forward to everything we have to look forward to in the next year and beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Skak nota fyr Simon, Simor dag fyrsa Kom meg era gei kort ni guir Ta lissa haning fegla Skjagum feinig gam og hi Is bien gach Martin Grena On spare down she on the sea Ta Laura kid and Waylin Spjag on in den vela tree Simon, Simor gag versa Kom eg ege kart ni guir
Well, that's all from us. Thank you very much for watching and listening. I have to say, I've really enjoyed my time here today. I think I've learned a lot about Siamsa Tíre, the company, a place where the voice is used in many ways, be it in harmony singing, solo singing, traditional singing, and everything in between. But I think we can all agree it's a place where the voice takes center stage all the time. And thank you so much for watching.
Banne gom sil taune gom sil farse gom dam heen Nil nier bis het hele gom na graime geringen veel is Se worden nach me wie ammedag Naar fos naar wie me hoog Vingen hischem hike sacher kosh my hinne fingam vroeg